Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Rinpoche is still caught up in traffic, so I've been asked to begin the session this evening. It looks like we have Moira and Wolfgang, is it, online? Hello. And we've got a few here in person as well. So we'll do the usual prayers before the reading starts. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge till enlightenment. By virtue of listening and the like, may I reach Buddhahood to aid all beings. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. By virtue of listening and the like, may I reach Buddhahood to aid all beings. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge till enlightenment. By the virtue of listening and the like, may I reach Buddhahood to aid all beings. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. So do the prayer to request teachings. According to the intelligence and predisposition of each being, we ask that you turn the Dharma wheel of great, low and common vehicles. So remembering that studying or listening, in this case, is the first of the three wisdoms, the three prajnas. So we have three levels of receiving teachings: listening, and then thinking or contemplating, and then meditating. So we'll continue from where we left off last week, which is page 670 of this edition.
755 in the...
Is that a different edition? Yeah. Okay, so 755 of it. Okay. So 755 or 670, depending on what edition you have. So it's the chapter Knowledge and Vision of the Way, and so it's the paragraph starting with knowledge of danger, is it? Yeah. All right, let's read from there. As he repeats, develops and cultivates the knowledge of appearance as terror, he finds no asylum, no shelter, no place to go, no refuge in any kind of becoming, generation, destiny, station, or abode. In all the kinds of becoming, generation, destiny, station, and abode, there is not a single formation that he can place his hopes in or hold on to. The three kinds of becoming appear like charcoal pits full of glowing coals, the four primary elements like hideous venomous snakes, the five aggregates like murderers with raised weapons, the six internal bases like an empty village, the six external bases like village raiding robbers, the seven stations of consciousness and the 9 abodes of beings as though burning, blazing and glowing with the 11 fires, and all formations appear as a huge mass of dangers, destitute of satisfaction or substance, like a tumour, a disease, a dart, a calamity, an affliction. How? They appear as a forest thicket of seemingly pleasant aspect, but infested with wild beasts, a cave full of tigers, water haunted by monsters and ogres, an enemy with raised sword, poisoned food, a road beset by robbers, a burning coal, a battlefield between contending armies appear to a timid man who wants to live in peace. And just as that man is frightened and horrified, and his hair stands up when he comes upon a thicket infested by wild beasts, etc., and he sees it as nothing but danger, so too, when all formations have appeared as a terror by contemplation of dissolution, this meditator sees them as utterly destitute of any core or any satisfaction, and as nothing but danger. How is it that understanding of appearance as terror is knowledge of danger? Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Arising is terror, is knowledge of danger. Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Occurrence is terror. The sign is terror. Accumulation is terror. Rebirth linking is terror. Destiny is terror. Generation is terror. Re-arising is terror. Birth is terror. Aging is terror. Sickness is terror. Death is terror. Sorrow is terror. Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Lamentation is terror, is knowledge of danger. Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Despair is terror, is knowledge of danger. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-arising is safety. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-occurrence is safety, etc. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-despair is safety. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Arising is terror. Non-arising is safety. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Occurrence is terror. Non-occurrence is safety, etc. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Despair is terror. Non-despair is safety. Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Arising is suffering, is knowledge of danger. Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Occurrence is suffering, etc. Despair is suffering, is knowledge of danger. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-occurrence is bliss, etc. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-despair is bliss. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Arising is suffering, non-arising is bliss. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Occurrence is suffering, non-occurrence is bliss, etc. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Despair is suffering, non-despair is bliss. Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Arising is worldly, is knowledge of danger. Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Occurrence is worldly, etc. Despair is worldly, is knowledge of danger. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-arising is unworldly. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-occurrence is unworldly, etc. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-despair is unworldly. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Arising is worldly. Non-arising is unworldly. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Occurrence is worldly. Non-occurrence is unworldly, etc. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Despair is worldly. Non-despair is unworldly. Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Arising as formations is knowledge of danger. Understanding of appearance as terror thus. Occurrence is formations, etc. Despair is formations, is knowledge of danger. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-arising is nibbana. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-occurrence is nibbana, etc. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Non-despair is nibbana. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Arising is formations. Non-arising is nibbana. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Occurrence is formations. Non-occurrence is nibbana, etc. Knowledge of the state of peace is this. Despair is formations. Non-despair is nibbana. He contemplates as suffering, arising, occurrence, and the sign, accumulation, rebirth, linking, and this his knowledge is of danger. He contemplates as bliss no arising, and no occurrence, and no sign, no accumulation, no rebirth linking, and this his knowledge is of peace. This knowledge about danger has 5 sources for its origin. Knowledge of peace has also 5. 10 knowledges he understands. When skilled in these 2 kinds of knowledge, the various views will shake him not. Knowledge is in the sense of that being known, and understanding is in the sense of the act of understanding that. Hence it was said, understanding of appearance as terror is knowledge of danger. Herein, arising is appearance here in this becoming, with previous karma as condition. Occurrence is the occurrence of what has arisen in this way. The sign is the sign of all formations. Accumulation is the karma that is the cause of future rebirth linking. Rebirth linking is future appearance. Destiny is the destiny in which the rebirth linking takes place. Generation is the generating of aggregates. Re-arising is the occurrence of karma result stated thus, in one who has attained to it or in one who has been reborn in it. Birth is birth with becoming as its condition, itself a condition for aging and so on. Aging, sickness, death, etc. are obvious. And here only the 5 beginning with arising are mentioned as actual objects of knowledge of danger. The rest are synonyms for them. For the pair, generation and birth, are synonyms both for arising and for rebirth linking. The pair, destiny and re-arising, are synonyms for occurrence. Aging, etc. are synonyms for the sign. Hence it was said, he contemplates as suffering, arising, occurrence and the sign, accumulation, rebirth linking, and this his knowledge is of danger. And this knowledge about danger has 5 sources for its origin. Knowledge of the state of peace is this, non-arising is safety, etc. This, however, should be understood as said for the purpose of showing the opposite kind of knowledge to knowledge of danger. Or when it is stated in this way, that there is safety without terror and free from the danger, it is for the purpose of comforting those who are upset in their hearts by seeing danger through appearance as terror. Or else, when arising, etc., have clearly appeared to a man as a terror, his mind inclines towards their opposites, and so this is said for the purpose of showing the advantages in the knowledge of danger established by the appearance as terror. And here, what is terror is certainly suffering, and what is suffering is purely worldly, since it is not free from the worldliness of the rounds of becoming, of the world, and of defilements, and what is worldly consists solely of formations. Therefore it is said that understanding of appearance as terror thus, arising is suffering, is knowledge of danger, and so on. And while this is so, still there is a difference to be understood here in the way these things, beginning with arising, occur, since there is a difference in their mode with the mode of terror, the mode of suffering, and the mode of worldliness. 10 knowledges he understands. One who understands knowledge of danger understands, penetrates, realizes 10 kinds of knowledge, that is, the 5 based on arising, etc., and the 5 on non-arising, and so on. When skilled in these 2 kinds of knowledge, with skill in the 2, that is, knowledge of danger and knowledge of the state of peace, the various views will shake him not. He does not vacillate about views that occur, such as the ultimate nibbana is here and now. The rest is clear. Knowledge of contemplation of danger is ended. 5. Knowledge of dispassion. When he sees all formations in this way as danger, he becomes dispassionate towards, is dissatisfied with, takes no delight in, the manifold field of formations belonging to any kind of becoming, destiny, station of consciousness, or abode of beings. Just as a golden swan that loves the foothills of Chitta Peak finds delight not in a filthy puddle at the gate of a village or of outcasts, but only in the 7 great lakes, so too this meditator, swan, finds delight not in the manifold formations seen clearly as danger, but only in the 7 contemplations, because he delights in development. And just as the lion, king of beasts, finds delight not when put into a gold cage, but only in Himalaya with its 3,000 leagues extent, so too the meditator lion finds delight not in the triple becoming of the happy destiny, but only in the 3 contemplations. And just as Chadanta, the king of elephants, all white with 7-fold stance, possessed of supernormal power, who travels through the air, finds pleasure not in the midst of a town, but only in the Chadanta lake and wood in the Himalaya, so too this meditator elephant finds delight not in any formation, but only in the state of peace seen in the way beginning, non-arising is safety, and his mind tends, inclines, and leans towards that. knowledge of contemplation of dispassion is ended. Knowledge of contemplation of danger is the same as the last two kinds of knowledge in meaning. Hence the ancients said, knowledge of appearance as terror, while one only has three names. It saw all formations as terror. Thus the name appearance as terror arose. It aroused the appearance of danger in those same formations. Thus the name contemplation of danger arose, becoming dispassionate towards those same formations. Thus the name contemplation of dispassion arose. Also it is said in the text, understanding of appearance as terror, knowledge of danger and dispassion, these things are one in meaning, only the letter is different. Knowledge of desire for deliverance. 6. When, owing to this knowledge of dispassion, this clansman becomes dispassionate towards, is dissatisfied with, takes no delight in any single one of all the manifold formations in any kind of becoming, generation, destiny, station of consciousness, or abode of beings, his mind no longer sticks fast, cleaves, fastens onto them, and he becomes desirous of being delivered from the whole field of formations and escaping from it. Like what? Just as a fish in a net, a frog in a snake's jaws, a jungle fowl shot into a cage, a deer fallen into the clutches of a strong snare, a snake in the hands of a snake charmer, an elephant stuck in fast in a great bog, a royal naga in the mouth of a supana, the moon inside Rahu's mouth, a man encircled by enemies, etc. Rahu's mouth refers to an eclipse, so when a moon becomes eclipsed. A man encircled by enemies, etc. Just as these are desirous of being delivered, of finding an escape from these things, so too this meditator's mind is desirous of being delivered from the whole field of formations and escaping from it. Then, when he thus no longer relies on any formations and is desirous of being delivered from the whole field of formations, knowledge of desire for deliverance arises in him. Knowledge of desire for deliverance is ended. 7. Knowledge of reflection. Being thus desirous of deliverance from all the manifold formations in any kind of becoming, generation, destiny, station or abode, in order to be delivered from the whole field of formations, he again discerns those same formations, attributing to them the three characteristics by knowledge of contemplation of reflection. He sees all formations as impermanent for the following reasons: because they are non-continuous, temporary, limited by rise and fall, disintegrating, fickle, perishable, unenduring, subject to change, coreless, due to be annihilated, formed, subject to death, and so on. He sees them as painful for the following reasons: because they are continuously oppressed, hard to bear, the basis of pain, a disease, a tumour, a dart, a calamity, an affliction, a plague, a disaster, a terror, a menace, no protection, no shelter, no refuge, a danger, the root of calamity, murderous, subject to cankers, Mara's bait, subject to birth, subject to aging, subject to illness, subject to sorrow, subject to lamentation, subject to despair, subject to defilement, and so on. He sees all formations as foul, ugly, the ancillary characteristic to that of pain, for the following reasons: because they are objectionable, stinking, disgusting, repulsive, unaffected by disguise, hideous, loathsome, and so on. He sees all formations as not self for the following reasons: because they are alien, empty, vain, void, ownerless, with no overlord, with none to wield power over them, and so on. It is when he sees formations in this way that he is said to discern them by attributing to them the three characteristics. But why does he discern them in this way? In order to contrive the means to deliverance. Here is a simile. A man thought to catch a fish, it seems, so he took a fishing net and cast it in the water. He put his hand into the mouth of the net under the water and seized a snake by the neck. He was glad, thinking, I have caught a fish. In the belief that he had caught a big fish, he lifted it up to see. When he saw 3 marks, he perceived that it was a snake, and he was terrified. He saw danger, felt dispassion, revulsion for what he had seized, and desired to be delivered from it. Contriving a means to deliverance, he unwrapped the coils from his hand, starting from the tip of its tail. Then he raised his arm, and when he had weakened the snake by swinging it 2 or 3 times around his head, he flung it away, crying, "Go, foul snake!" Then quickly scrambling up onto dry land, he stood looking back whence he had come, thinking, "Goodness, I have been delivered from the jaws of a huge snake." Herein, the time when the meditator was glad at the outset to have acquired a person is like the time when the man is glad to have seized the snake by the neck. This meditator seeing the 3 characteristics in formations after effecting resolution of the compact into elements is like the man seeing the 3 marks on pulling the snake's head out of the mouth of the net. The meditator's knowledge of appearance as terror is like the time when the man was frightened. Knowledge of contemplation of danger is like the man's thereupon seeing the danger. Knowledge of the contemplation of dispassion is like the man's dispassion, revulsion for what he had seized. Knowledge of desire for deliverance is like the man's deliverance from the snake. The attribution of the 3 characteristics to formations by knowledge of contemplation of reflection is like the man's contriving a means to deliverance. For just as the man weakened the snake by swinging it, keeping it away, and rendering it incapable of biting, and was thus quite delivered, so too this meditator weakens formations by swinging them with the attribution of the 3 characteristics, rendering them incapable of appearing again in the modes of permanence, pleasure, beauty, and self, and is thus quite delivered. That is why it was said above that he discerns them in this way, in order to contrive the means to deliverance. At this point, knowledge of reflection has arisen in him, with reference to which it is said, "When he brings to mind as impermanent, there arises in him knowledge after reflecting on what? When he brings to mind as painful, as not self, there arises in him knowledge after reflecting on what? When he brings to mind as impermanent, there arises in him knowledge after reflecting on the sign. When he brings to mind as painful, there arises in him knowledge after reflecting on occurrence. When he brings to mind as not self, there arises in him knowledge after reflecting on the sign and occurrence." As here, after reflecting on the sign means having known the sign of formations by means of the characteristic of impermanence as unlasting and temporary. Of course, it is not that, first having known, subsequently knowledge arises, but it is expressed in this way according to common usage, as in the passage beginning, "Due to," literally having depended upon, mind and mental object, mind consciousness arises, and so on. Or alternatively, it can be understood as expressed thus, according to the method of identity, by identifying the preceding with the subsequent. The meaning of the remaining 2 expressions, that is, occurrence and the sign of occurrence, should be understood in the same way. Knowledge of contemplation of reflection is ended. Discerning formations as void. Having thus discerned by knowledge of contemplation of reflection that all formations are void, he again discerns voidness in the double logical relation thus: this is void of self or of what belongs to self. When he has thus seen that there is neither a self nor any thing or being occupying the position of a self's property, he again discerns voidness in the quadruple logical relation as set forth in this passage. I am not anywhere anyone's owning, nor is there anywhere my owning in any one. Naham kvachani kasachir kinchanat dasmin na cha mama kvachani kisminchi kinchanat ati. How? This meditator, thinking I, not anywhere, naham kvachani, does not see a self anywhere. Thinking am anyone's owning, kasachi kinchanat asmin, he does not see a self of his own to be inferred in another's owning. The meaning is that he does not see a self of his own deducible by conceiving a brother to own it in the case of a brother, a friend to own it in the case of a friend, or a chattel to own it in the case of a chattel. As regards the phrase, nor anywhere my, nacha mama kvachani, leaving aside the world, my, mama, here for the moment, the words nor anywhere, nacha kvachani, means that he does not see another's self anywhere. Now bringing in the word my, mama, we have, is there my owning in anyone, mama kisminchi kinchanat ati, he does not see thus another's self-existing owing to some state of my owning of it. The meaning is that he does not see in any instance another's self-deducible owing to this fact of his owning a brother in the case of a brother, a friend in the case of a friend, chattel in the case of chattel. So, 1, he sees no self anywhere of his own. 2, nor does he see it as deducible in the fact of another's owning. 3, nor does he see another's self. 4, nor does he see that as deducible in the fact of his own owning. This is how he discerns voidness in the quadruple logical relation. Having discerned voidness in the quadruple logical relation in this way, he discerns voidness again in 6 modes. How? I, 1, is the void of self. 2, or of the property of a self. 3, or of permanence. 4, or of lastingness. 5, or of eternalness. 6, or of non-subjectness to change. Mind, visible data, mental data, eye consciousness, mind consciousness, mind contact, and this should be continued as far as aging and death. Having discerned voidness in the 6 modes in this way, he discerns it again in 8 modes, that is to say, materiality has no core, is coreless, without core, as far as concerns 1, any core of permanence, or 2, core of lastingness, or 3, core of pleasure, or 4, core of self, or as far as concerns 5, what is permanent, or 6, what is lasting, or 7, what is eternal, or 8, what is not subject to change. Feeling, perception, formations, consciousness, I, etc., aging and death has no core, is coreless, without a core, as far as concerns any core of permanence, or core of lastingness, or core of pleasure, or core of self, or as far as concerns what is permanent, or what is lasting, or what is eternal, or what is not subject to change. Just as a reed has no core, is coreless, without core, just as a castor oil plant, an udumbara, fig tree, a setavacha tree, a pali badaka tree, a lump of froth, a bubble on water, a mirage, a plantain trunk, a conjuring trick has no core, is coreless, without core. So too materiality, etc., aging and death has no core, or what is subject to change. Having discerned voidness in 8 modes in this way, he discerns it again in 10 modes. How? He sees materiality as empty, as vain, as not self, as having no overlord, as incapable of being made into what one wants, as incapable of being had as one wishes, as insusceptible to the exercise of mastery, as alien, as secluded from past and future. He sees feeling, etc., consciousness as empty, as secluded. Having discerned voidness in 10 modes in this way, he discerns it again in 12 modes, that is to say, materiality is no living being, no soul, no human being, no man, no female, no male, no self, no property of a self, not I, not mine, not another's, not anyone's. Feeling, etc., consciousness, not anyone's. Having discerned voidness in 12 modes in this way, he discerns it again in 42 modes through full understanding as investigating. He sees materiality as impermanent, as painful, as a disease, a tumour, a dart, a calamity, an affliction, as alien, as disintegrating, a plague, a disaster, a terror, a menace, as fickle, perishable, unenduring, as no protection, no shelter, no refuge, as unfit to be a refuge, as empty, vain, void, not self, as without satisfaction, as a danger, as subject to change, as having no core, as the root of calamity, as murderous, as due to be annihilated, as subject to cankers, as formed, as martyr's bait, as subject to birth, subject to aging, subject to illness, subject to death, subject to sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair, as arising, as departing, as danger, as having an escape. He sees feeling, etc., consciousness as having an escape. And this is said too. When he sees materiality as impermanent, as having an escape, he looks upon the world as void. When he sees feeling, etc., consciousness as impermanent, as having an escape, he looks upon the world as void. Let him look on the world as void. Thus Mogaraja, always mindful, he may escape the clutch of death by giving up belief in the self. For King Death cannot see the man that looks in this way on the world.
Paragraph 61.
Okay.
I'll continue reading paragraph 61. Thank you, everyone. Knowledge of equanimity about formations. When he has discerned formation by attributing the three characteristics to them and seeing them as void in this way, he abandons both terror and delight. He becomes indifferent to them, neutral. He neither takes them as I nor as mine. He is like a man who has divorced his wife. Suppose a man were married to a lovely, desirable, charming wife, and so deeply in love with her as to be unable to bear separation from her for a moment. He would be disturbed and displeased to see her standing or sitting or talking or laughing with another man, and he would be very unhappy. But later, when he had found out the woman's faults and wanting to get free, had divorced her, he would no more take her as mine, and thereafter, even though he saw her doing whatever it might be with whomsoever it might be, he would not be disturbed or displeased, but would on the contrary be indifferent and neutral. So too, this meditator, wanting to get free from all formations, discerns formation by the contemplation of reflection. Then, seeing nothing to be taken as I or mine, he abandons both terror and delight and becomes indifferent and neutral towards all formations. When he knows and sees thus, his heart retreats, retracts, recoils from the three kinds of becoming, 4 kinds of generation, 5 kinds of destiny, 7 stations of consciousness, and 9 abodes of being. His heart no longer goes out to them. Either equanimity or repulsiveness is established, just as water drops retreat, retract, or recoil on a lotus leaf that slopes a little and do not spread out, so too his heart. And just as a fowl's feather or a shred of sinew thrown on a fire retreats, retracts, and recoils, and does not spread out, so too his heart retreats, retracts, recoils from three kinds of becoming. Either equanimity or repulsiveness is established. In this way, there arises in him what is called knowledge of equanimity about formations. But if this knowledge sees Nibbana, the state of peace, as peaceful, it rejects the occurrence of all formations and enters only into Nibbana. If it does not see Nibbana as peaceful, it occurs again and again with formation as its object, like the sailor's crow. When the traders board a ship, it seems they take with them what is called a land-finding crow. When the ship gets blown off its course by gales and goes adrift with no land in sight, then they release the land-finding crow. It takes off from the masthead, and after exploring all the quarters, if it sees land, it flies straight in the direction of it. If not, it returns a light on the masthead. So too, if knowledge of equanimity about formations sees Nibbana, the state of peace, as peaceful, it rejects an occurrence of all formations, enters only into Nibbana. If it does not see it, it occurs again and again with formation as its object. Now, after discerning formation in various modes, as though shifting flour on the edge of a tray, as though carding cotton from which the seeds have picked out, and after abandoning terror and delight, and after becoming neutral in investigation of formation, he still persists in the triple contemplation. And in so doing, the insight knowledge enters upon the state of the triple gateway to liberation, and it becomes a condition for the classification of noble person into 7 kinds. Triple gateway of liberation. It enters upon the state of triple gateway to liberation, now with the predominance of one of the 3 faculties, according as the contemplation occurs in one of the 3 ways. For it is 3 contemplations that are called 3 gateway to liberation, according as it is said. But these 3 gateways to liberation lead to the outlight from the world. That is to say, one is to the seeing of all formation as limited and circumscribed, and to the entering of consciousness into the signless element. 2, to the stirring of the mind with respect to all formation, and to entering of consciousness into desireless element. 3, to the seeing of all things, Dhamma, as alien, and is entering of consciousness into the voidness element. These 3 gateway to liberation lead to the outlet from the world. Herein, as limited and circumscribed means both as limited and by rise and fall as circumscribed by them. By contemplation of impermanence limits them. Thus, formation do not exist previous to their rise, and in seeking the destiny sees them as circumscribed. Thus they do not get beyond fall, they vanish there. So to the stirring up of the mind, by giving consciousness a sense of urgency, for with the contemplation of pain, consciousness acquires sense of urgency with respect to formation. To the seeing as alien, to contemplation to them as not self, thus not I, not mine. So these 3 clauses should be understood as to express the contemplation of impermanent and so on. Hence, in the answer to the next question asked in the Patisambhidda, it is said, when he brings them the mind of impermanent, formation appears as liable to distraction. When he brings them mind to be painful, formation appears as terror. When he brings them to mind as not self, formation appears as void. What are the liberation to which these contemplations are gateways? They are these three, namely the signless, desireless, and void. For this is said, when one who has great resolution brings formation to mind as impermanent, he acquires the signless liberation. When one who has great tranquility brings them to the mind as painful, he acquires the desireless liberation. When one who has great wisdom being them to the mind as not self, he acquires the void, the liberation. And here the signless liberation should be understood as the noble path that has occurred by making Nibbana its object through the signless aspect. For that path is signless owing to the signless element having arisen, and it is liberation owing to deliverance from defilements. In the same way, the path that has occurred by making Nibbana object through this desireless aspect is desireless. And the path that has occurred by making Nibbana its object through the void aspect is void. But it is said in the Abhidhamma, on the occasion when he develops the supermundane jhana, that is an outlet and leads to dispersal, having abandoned the field of false views with the teaching of the first grade, secluded from the sense desire, he enters upon and dwells in the first jhana, which is desireless void, thus mentioning only true liberation. This refers to the way in which insight arrives as the path and is expressed literally. However, in Patisambhidda, inside knowledge is expressed as follows. 1. It is expressed firstly by void liberation by its liberating from misinterpreting formation. Knowledge of contemplation of impermanence is void liberation since it liberates from interpreting them as permanent. Knowledge of contemplation of pain is the of void of liberation since it liberates from interpreting them as pleasant. Knowledge of contemplation is not self, is the void liberation, since it liberates from interpreting them as self. 2. Then it is expressed as the signless liberation by liberating three from signs. Knowledge of contemplation of impermanence is the signless liberation, since it liberates from the sign of formation as permanent. Knowledge of contemplation of pain is the signless liberation sign, because it liberates from the sign of formation as pleasant. Knowledge of contemplation is of not self is the signless liberation of liberation, since it liberates from the sign of formation as self. 3. Lastly, it is expressed as the desireless form liberation by its liberating from desire. Knowledge of contemplation of impermanence is the desireless liberation, since it liberates from desire for formation as permanent. Knowledge of contemplation of pain is the desireless liberation, since it liberates from the desire for them as pleasant. Knowledge of contemplation of not self is the desireless liberation, since it liberates from the desire for them as self. But although stated in this way, the insight knowledge is not literally signless, because there is no abandoning of the sign of formation as formed here, as distinct from the sign of impermanent, and so on. It is, however, literally void and desireless, and it is at the moment of noble path the liberation is distinguished, and that it is done according to the insight knowledge way of arrival on the path. That it should be understood is why only two liberations are stated in the Abhidhamma, namely desireless and voidness. This firstly is the treatise on the liberation here. 7 kinds of noble persons. It was said above, it becomes a condition for the classification noble person into 7 kinds. Herein there are firstly these 7 kinds of noble person. 1, faith devotee. 2, one devoted by faith, liberated by faith. 3, the body witness. 4, the both ways liberated. 5, the Dhamma devotees. 6, one attained to vision. 7, one liberated liberated by understanding. This knowledge of equanimity about formation is a condition for knowledge being placed on these 7 classes. When a man brings formation to mind as impermanent and having great resolution acquires faith faculty, 1. He becomes a faith devotee at the moment of the stream entry path, and in the other 7 instances, that is in the 3 higher path of the 4 fruition, becomes 2, 1 liberated by faith, when a man brings them to a mind as painful and having great tranquility acquires the faculty of concentration. 3, he is called a body witness in all 8 instances. 4, he is called both ways liberated when he has reached the highest fruition after also reaching the immaterial jhanas. When a man brings them to mind as no self and having great wisdom acquires a faculty of understanding, he becomes 5, a dharma devotee at the moment of stream entry path. 6th, in the next 6 instances, he becomes 1 attained to vision. 7, in the case of highest fruition, he becomes 1 liberated by understanding. 1. This is said, when he brings formation to mind as impermanent, the faith faculty is in excess in him. With faith faculty in excess, he acquires stream entry path. Hence, he is called faith devotee. Likewise, 2. When he brings formation to mind as impermanent, the faith faculty is in excess with him. With faith faculty is excess in excess, the fruition stream entry is realized. Hence, he is called 1 liberated by faith. It is said further, at the moment of the first path, 2, he has been liberated by faith. Thus, he is 1 liberated by faith. 3, he has realized nibbana by experiencing. Thus, he is his body witness. 6, he has attained nibbana by vision. Thus, he is attained to vision at the moment of 3 remaining path. 2, he is liberated by faith. Thus, he is 1 liberated by faith. 3, he experiences the experience of jhana and afterwards realized cessation, nibbana. Thus, he is body witness. 6, it is known, seen, recognized, realized, and experienced with understanding that formations are painful and cessation is bliss. Thus, he is 1 attained to vision. As to the remaining 4, however, the word meaning should be understood thus: 1, he follows faith, thus he is a faith devotee, or he goes by means of faith, thus he is a faith devotee. 5, likewise, he follows the dharma called understanding, or he follows by means of dharma, thus he is dharma devotee. 4, he is liberated in both ways, by immaterial jhana and the noble path, thus he is both ways liberated. 7, understanding he is liberated, thus he is liberated by understanding. Knowledge of equanimity about formations. The last 3 kinds of knowledge are 1. This knowledge of equanimity about formation is the same in meaning in 2 kinds that preceded. Hence, the ancients say this knowledge of equanimity about formation is 1 only and has 3 names. At the outset, it has a name of knowledge of desire for deliverance. In the middle, it has the name knowledge of reflection. At the end, when it has reached the culmination, it is called knowledge of equanimity about formation. How is it that understanding of desire for deliverance, of reflection, and of composure is knowledge of the kinds of equanimity about formation? Understanding of desire for deliverance, reflection, and composure occupied with arising is knowledge of equanimity about formation. Understanding of desire for deliverance or reflection and of composure occupied with occurrence, the sign, etc., with despair is knowledge of equanimity about formation. Herein, the compound consisting of compound munchika mayata patisambhada santigdhana, consisting of desire for deliverance in reflection and in composure, should be resolved with munchitu kamayata cha sa patisankha cha santina cha. So, in the first stage, it is a desire to give up, the desire to be delivered from arising, etc., in one who has become dispassionate by knowledge of the dispassion, that is, desire for deliverance. It's a reflection in the middle stage of the purpose of finding means of deliverance, that is, reflection. It is equanimous on looking in this end stage of being delivered, that is, composure. It is said that the reflection in this, arising in its formation, he looks with equanimity on those formations. Thus, it is equanimity with the formation, and so on. So, this is only one kind of knowledge. Furthermore, it may be understood that this is so from the following text. So, for this is said, desire for deliverance and contemplation for reflection and equanimity about formation, these things are one in meaning, and only the latter is different. Insight leading to emergence of the path. Now, when the clansman has reached equanimity about formations, thus his insight has reached its culmination and heads to emergence. Insight that has reached culmination, or insight leading to emergence, are names for the three kinds of knowledge, beginning with equanimity about formation, that is, equanimity about formation, conformity, and change of lineage. It has reached its culmination because it has reached the culminating final stage. It is called leading to emergence because it goes toward emergence. The path is called emergence because it emerges externally from the objective base interpreted as the sign, and also internally from the occurrence of the defilements. It goes to that, thus it leads to emergence. The meaning is that it joins with the path. Herein, for the purpose of classification, there is this list of kinds of emergence class according to the manner of interpreting. 1. After interpreting the internal, it emerges from the internal. 2. After interpreting the internal, emerges from the external. 3. After interpreting the external, it emerges from the external. 4. After interpreting the external, it emerges from the internal. 5. After interpreting material as it emerges from the material. 6. After interpreting the material, it emerges from the immaterial. 7. After interpreting the immaterial, it emerges from the immaterial. 8. After interpreting the immaterial, it emerges from the material. 9. It emerges at the stroke from the 5 aggregates. 10. After interpreting it as impermanent, it emerges from the impermanent. After 11. After interpreting as impermanent, it emerges as from the painful. 12. After interpreting the impermanent, it emerges from the no-self. 13. After interpreting as painful, it emerges from the painful. 14. After interpreting it as painful, it emerges from the impermanent. 15. After interpreting as painful, it emerges from the no-self. 16. After interpreting as no-self, it emerges from the not-self. 17. After interpreting as no-self, it emerges from the impermanent. 19, 18. After interpreting not self, it emerges from the painful. How? Here, 1. Someone does his interpreting at the start with his own internal formation. After interpreting them, he sees them. But emergence of the path does not come about through seeing the bare internal only, since the external must be seen too. So he sees the another's aggregate as well as unclung to formations, inanimate things are impermanent, painful, not self. And at one time, he comprehends the external and another time external. So as he does so, insight joins with the path while he is comprehending the internal. It is said of him that after interpreting the internal, it emerges from the internal. 2. If If his insight joins with the path at the time when he is comprehending the external, it is said of him that after interpreting the internal, it emerges from the external. 3, similarly, in the case of after interpreting the external, it emerges from the external, and 4 from the internal. 5, another does this interpreting at the start of materiality. When he has done that, he sees the materiality of the primary. And the materiality derived from all together. But emergence does not come about through the seeing of bare materiality, only since the material must be seen too. So he sees as the immaterial mentality and the feeling, perception, formation, consciousness that have arisen by making materiality their object. At one time, he comprehends the materiality, and another the immaterial. So as he does so, insight joins with the path while he is comprehending materiality. It is said of him that after interpreting the material, it emerges from the material. 6. It is his insight joins with path at the time when he is comprehending the immaterial. It is said of him that after interpreting the material, it emerges from the immaterial. 7. Similarly, in the case of after interpreting the material, it emerges from the immaterial, and 8 from the material. 9. When he has done his interpreting in this way, all that is subject to arising is subject to cessation, and so too at the time of emergence, it is said that it emerges at one stroke from the 5 aggregates. 10. One man comprehends formation as impermanent at the start, but emergence does not come about through mere comprehending as impermanent, since there must be comprehension of them as painful and not self too, so comprehends them as painful and not self. And as he does so, emergence comes about while he is comprehending them as impermanent. It is said of him that after interpreting as impermanent, it emerges from the impermanent. But if emergence comes in him while he is comprehending them as painful, as not self, then it is said after interpreting the impermanent, it emerges from the painful, from the no self. Similarly, in the cases of emergence, after interpreting 13 to 15 as painful and 16 to 18 as not self. And whether they have interpreted at the start as impermanent or as painful at a not self, when the time of emergence comes, if the emergence takes place while contemplating as impermanent, then all 3 persons acquire the faculty of faith. Since they have great resolution, they are liberated by the silence liberation, and so they become faith devotees at the moment of the first path, and by the remaining 7 stages, they are liberated by faith. If the emergence is from the painful, and then the 3 persons acquire the faculty of concentration. Since they have great tranquility, they are liberated by the desireless liberation, and all the 8 states, they are body witnesses. Of them, the one who has an immaterial jhana as the basis of his insight is, in the case of high fruition, both as liberated. And then, if the emergence takes place while contemplating as not self, the 3 persons acquire the faculty of understanding. Since they have great wisdom, they have liberated by the void liberation, and they become Dhamma devotees at the moment of the first path. It is next 6 instances they become attained to division, and in the case of highest fruit, they are liberated by understanding. 12 similes. Now, 12 similes should be understood in order to explain this insight leading to emergence and the kinds of true knowledge that precedes and follows it. Here is the list. The bat, 2, the black snake, the 3, the house, 4, the oxen, 5, the girl, 6, the child, 7, the hunger, 8, the thirst, 9, cold, 8, heat, and 9, cold, 10 heat, and 11 darkness, and 12 by poison too. A pause can be made to bring in these similes anywhere among the kinds of knowledge, knowledge from appearance as terror onwards. But if they are brought in here, they all become clear from appearance as terror up to fruition knowledge, which is why it was said that they should be brought in here. 1. The bat. There was a bat, it seems. She had alighted on a manduka tree with 5 branches, thinking, I shall find flowers or fruit here. She investigated the one branch, but saw no flowers or fruits there worth taking. And as with the first, so too she tried with the second, the third, fourth, and the fifth, but saw nothing. She thought, the tree is barren. There is nothing worth taking here. So she lost interest in the tree. She climbed up to the straight branch, and poking her head through the gap in the foliage, she looked upwards, flew up into the air, and alighted on another tree. Herein the meditator should be regarded as like the bat. The 5 aggregates are as objects of clinging, are like the manduka tree with the 5 branches. The meditator's interpreting of the 5 aggregates is like bats alighting on the tree. He comprehending the materiality aggregate and seeing nothing there worth taking, comprehending the remaining aggregate is like her trying each branch and seeing nothing worth taking, trying the rest. His triple knowledge, beginning with the desire for deliverance, then he has become dispassionate towards the five aggregates through seeing their characteristics of impermanence, etc. is like her thinking the tree is barren, there's nothing worth taking here, and losing interest. His conformity knowledge is like her climbing up the straight branch. His change of lineage knows is like her poking her head out and looking up and upwards. His path knowledge is like her flying up in the air. His fruit knowledge is like her alighting on a different tree. The black seeds, black snake, the second analogy. This simile has already been given before, but the application of the simile here is this: change of lineage knowledge is like throwing a snake away. Path knowledge is like a man's standing and look back whence he had come after getting from it. Fruition knowledge is like his standing in place, free from fear after he got away. This is the difference. Number 3, the house. The owner of a house, it seems, ate his meal in the evening, climbed into his bed, and fell asleep. The house caught fire, maybe mouse too. The house caught fire. When he woke up, he saw the fire. He was frightened. He thought it would be good if I could get out without getting burned. Looking around, he saw a way getting out. He quickly went away to a safe place and stayed there. Herein the foolish ordinary man's taking five aggregates, I and mine, is like a house owner's falling asleep. After he had eaten and climbed into the bed, knowledge of appearance of terror after entering upon the right way and seeing the three characteristics is like time, like the time when the man was frightened on waking up and seeing the fire. Knowledge of desire for deliverance is like man's looking for way out. Conformity knowledge is like man's seeing the way. Change of lineage is like man's getting out. Path knowledge is like man's going away quickly. Fruition knowledge is like he's staying in the safe place. 4. The oxen. One night, it seems, while the farmer was sleeping, his oxen broke out of their stable and escaped. When he went there at dawn, he looked and found that they had escaped. Going to find them, he saw the king's oxen. He thought that they were his and drove them back. When it got light, he recognized that they were not his but king's oxen. He was frightened, thinking, I shall escape from king's man, seize me for the thief, and bring me to ruin and destruction. He abandoned the oxen, escaping quickly. He stopped in a place free from fear. Herein the foolish ordinary man's taking the five aggregates as I and mine is like man's taking king's oxen. The meditator recognizing the five aggregates as impermanent, painful, and not self by means of three characteristics is like the man's recognizing the oxen as the king's when it got light. Knowledge of appearance as terror is like the time when the man was frightened. Desire for deliverance is like the man's desire to leave them and go away. A change of lineage is like the man's actual leaving. The path is like his escaping. Fruition like the man's staying in a place without fear after escaping. 5. The goal. The man went to live with a goal, it seems. At night, thinking he is asleep, he went to the bliss where the dead were exposed and ate human flesh. He wandered there where he was going and followed her. When he saw her eating human flesh, he knew that she was a non-human being. He was frightened and he thought, I shall escape before she eats me. Quickly escaping, he went to a safe place and stayed there. Herein, taking the five aggregates, I and mine, is like man's living with the goal. Recognizing the aggregate as impermanent, etc., by seeing the three characteristics like man's recognizing that she was a goal, on seeing her eating human flesh in a place for the dead. Appearance as terror is like time when man was frightened. Desire for deliverance is like his desire for escape. Change of lineage is like his leaving the place for the dead. The path is like escaping quickly. Fruition like the standing in the place without fear. 6. The child. A woman was very fond of her own son, it seems. While sitting on an upper floor, she heard a sound of a child in the street. Wondering, is someone hurting my child? She hurried down. Mistaking the child for her own son, she picked up someone else's son. Then she recognized that it was someone else's son. And she was ashamed and looked at about her. She thought, let no one say I'm baby thief. And she put the child down there, and then she quickly returned to the upper floor and sat down. Herein, taking the five aggregates I and mine is like woman's mistaking someone else's child for her own. The recognition that this is not I, this is not mine, by means of the three characteristics is like her recognizing it as someone else's child. Knowledge of desire for liberation is like her looking about her. Conformity knowledge is like her putting the child down and then. Change of lineage is like time when she stood in the street after putting the child down. The path is like her return to the upper floor. Fruition is like sitting down after returning. 7 to 12 analogies, and they had the hunger, thirst, cold, heat, darkness, and by poison. These 6 similes, however, are given for the purpose of showing that one who, with insight that leads to emergence, tends, inclines, and leans in the direction of supermundane states. 7. Just as a man faint with hunger and famished longs, hunger and famished longs for delicious tasting food, so too the meditator famished with hunger of the round of the rebirth longs for food consisting of mindfulness occupied with the body which tastes of the deathless. 8. Just as a thirsty man whose throat and mouth are parched longs for a drink with many ingredients, so too this meditator who is parched with the thirst of round of rebirth for the noble drinks of Eightfold Path. 9. Just as a man frozen by cold longs for heat, so too the meditator frozen by the cold of craving and selfish affection in the rounds of rebirth longs for the fire of path that burns up the defilements. 10. Just as a man faint with the heat longs for cold, so too this meditator scorched by the burning of 11 fires in the round of rebirth longs for nibbana. 11. Just as a man smothered in darkness longs for light, so too this meditator wrapped and enveloped in the darkness of ignorance longs for the light of knowledge consisting in path development. 12. Just as a man sick with poison longs for an antidote, so too the meditator sick with poison of defilements longs for nibbana, that the deathless medicine that destroys the poison of defilements. That is why it was said above, when he knows and sees, his heart retracts, recoils from the 3 kinds of becoming, 4 kinds of generation, 5 kinds of destiny, 7 kinds of station of consciousness, and 9 kinds of abode. His heart no longer goes out to them, just as water drops, retreats, retracts, and recoil on a lotus leaf that slopes a little, all of which should be given in way already stated. But at the point he is called one who walks aloof, with reference to whom it is stated, when a bhikshu keeps apart and cultivates the seclusion of the mind, it will befit him, as they say, to show himself no more in this becoming. What governs the difference in the nobleman's enlightenment factors, etc. This knowledge of equanimity about formation governs the fact that the meditator keeps apart. It furthermore governs the difference in the number of the noble path enlightenment factors, path factors, jhana factors, the mode of progress, and the kind of liberation. For while some elders say that it is the jhana used as the basis of insight leading to emergence that governs the difference in the number of enlightenment factors, path factors, and jhana factors, and some say it is the aggregate made the object of insight that governs it, and some say it is the personal bent that governs it, and yet it is only this preliminary insight, and insight leading to emergence that should be understood to govern in the doctrine. To deal with these 3 theories in order, according to governance by insight, path arisen in the bare insight, dry insight, worker, and the path arisen in one who possesses a jhana attainment, but he who has not made the jhana and the basis of insight, and the path made to arise by comprehending unrelated formation after using the first jhana as the basis of insight are path of the first jhana only. In each case there are 7 enlightenment factors, 8 path factors, 5 jhana factors. For while the preliminary insight can be accompanied by joy and can be accompanied by equanimity, And when their insight reaches the state of equanimity about formation, at the time of emergence, it is accompanied by joy. When paths are made to arise by using a second, third, and fourth jhanas in the fivefold reckoning as the basis for insight, then the jhana in those paths has respectively 4, 3, and 2 factors. In each case, however, the path factors number 7, and the fourth case there are 6 enlightenment factors. This difference is due both to the governance by the basic jhana and to the governance by insight. For again, while the preliminary insight can be accompanied by the joy, but it can be accompanied by equanimity, the insight leading to emergence is accompanied by joy only. However, when the path is produced by making the 5th jhana the basis for insight and the jhana factor number 2, that is equanimity with unification of mind, and that there are 6 enlightenment factors and 7 path factors. This difference too is due to both kinds of governance. For in this case, the preliminary insight is either accompanied by joy or accompanied by equanimity, but that leading to emergence is accompanied by equanimity only. The same method applies in the case of path made to arise, making the immaterial jhanas the basis of insight. Also, when after emerging from jhana made the basis for its insight, the path has been produced by comprehending no matter what formation unrelated to the jhana, then it is attainment emerge from at that point nearest to the path that makes it like itself, as the color of the soil does an iguana's color. But in the case of second elder's theory, the path is like attainment. Whatever it may be, which was instrumental in producing the path through the comprehension of any of the states after emergence from it. And here, governance by insight should be understood in the same way as before. In the case of third elder's theory, is like third elder's theory. The path is like that jhana, whichever it may be, that suits the personal bent. Which jhana was instrumental in producing the path through the comprehension of any of the states in using it as the basis of insight. But this is not accomplished by a mere bent alone, unless the jhana has been made the basis of insight, or unless the jhana has been comprehended, and this meaning should be illustrated by the Nandavokavada Sutra and the commentary. And here too, governance by insight should be understood in the same way as before. This firstly is how should be understood that equanimity about formation govern the number of enlightenment factors, path factors, and jhana factors. Progress. But if insight has from the start only been able to suppress the defilements with difficulty, with effort, and with prompting, then it is called the difficult progress. The opposite kind is called easy progress. And when the manifestation of the path, the goal of insight, is slowly affected after defilements have been suppressed, when it is called of sluggish direct knowledge. The opposite kind is called of swift direct knowledge. So this equanimity about formation stands at the arrival point, gives its own name to path in each case, and the path has 4 names according to the kinds of progress. For one bhikkhu, this progress is different in the 4 paths, while the another it is the same. For Buddhas, however, the 4 paths are of easy progress and swift direct knowledge. Likewise, in the case of general of the Dhamma, Elder Shariputra, but in the Elder Mahamoggallana case, the first path was of easy progress and swift direct knowledge, but the others were difficult progress and sluggish direct knowledge, predominance. And as with the kinds of progress, so also so with kind of predominance, which are pretty different in the four paths for one bhikkhu and the same for another. So it is equanimity with about formation that governs the difference in the progress, liberation. But it has also been told below how it governs the difference in the liberation. Furthermore, path gets its name for 5 reasons. That is to say, 1, owing to its own nature, 2, owing to what it is opposes, or 3, owing to its personal special qualities, 4, owing to its object, and 5, owing to the way of arrival. 1. If equanimity about formation induces emergence by comprehending formations as impermanent, liberation takes place with the signless liberation. It is if it induces emergence by comprehending them as painful, liberation takes place with the desireless liberation. If it induces emergence by comprehending them as not self, liberation takes place with the void liberation. This is its name according to its own nature. 2. When this path is arrived at with the abandoning of the signs of predominance, lastingness, and eternalness, by effecting the resolution of the compact of formation through the means of contemplation of impermanence, it is called signless. When it is arrived at which the drying up of the desire and longing by abandoning perception of pleasure through the means of contemplation of pain, it is then called desireless. When formation are seen as devoid of abandoning perception of self, of a living being, of a person, through the means of contemplating of not self, it is called void. This is name according to what it opposes. 3. It is void because it's a void of greed and so on. It is signless owing to either of the absence of the sign of materiality, etc., or the absence only of the sign of greed and so on. It is desireless because of absence of desire as greed and so on. This is its name according to its own special quality. It is called void, signless, and desireless too, because it makes the void signless and desireless nibbana its object. This is the name according to its object. 5. The way of arrival is twofold, namely, inside way of arrival applies to the path, and pathway of arrival applies to the fruition. Now the contemplation of no self is called void, and the path arrived at is void inside is called void. Again, contemplation of impermanence is called signless, and the path arrive at by signless is inside is called signless. But while this man is inadmissible by the Abhidhamma method, it is, however, admissible by the Suttanta method. For they say by that method, change of lineage takes the name signless by making the signless nibbana its object, and while itself remaining at the arrival point, it gives you the name of the path. Hence, the path is called signless, and the fruition is called signless too, according to the pathway of arrival. Lastly, contemplation of pain is called desireless because it arrives on the path by drying up desire for formations. A path arrived by desireless insight is called desireless. The fruition of desireless path is called desireless. In this way, insight gives its own name to its origin, and the path hands it on to fruition. This is its name according to the way of arrival. This is how equanimity about formation governs the difference in the liberation. Equanimity about formation is ended. we'll stop there. Even though the term comes to an end today, but we only got two more readings, so we will continue the next 2 weeks.
Will that be here?
Yeah, I think we'll be here. Yeah. Since we have the good company of each other, so we'll finish this holy book. Very good, thank you. It's very profound reading. Thank you for listening. Following all days, I shall Mede Selem Body Jeda Tebe no yeranza, where has been bometing, freely without the generation. Thank you, everyone.